All right, it's the end of the session. This is Thor. You saw him in the video above, and this is Macy, who you heard in the video above. These are bully sticks, and this is their roadmap to success. I just want to have the dogs in the shot, so I'm going to hold these for a little while. Okay, so basically, we started off the session. Now, Thor is a very nervous dog, so I think part of this is, again, he was adopted at 4 weeks because, didn't have a mother at that point. And so ideally, you don't want to get a dog that early. You'd really like to get that dog with another litter of other dogs so that they have that social interaction and all that fun stuff. They learn so much, and they're very skittish, and he's a good example of it. He's very skittish for a lot of things. So if you want to work on him not barking at the door, doing some training with him, let us know. I have a couple trainers I've just hired that I'm going to be training, and so I'll need some training examples or opportunities for them. But also we can send out Taylor. So there's a lot of little things that you can do, but the more tricks that you can teach Thor, the better he's going to be at. I'm not pulling it away. I'm just trying to hold it. But the more confident, the more skills he has, and through commands, the more confident he will be. Insecure dogs. This is yours, Macy. Yours is over here. This is Thor's. Okay, I'll lay it down. You can get that one. We'll be dogless probably for the rest of the shop. We'll see. Okay, so basically that's the first, so that's one of the things that teaching him tricks and commands is going to go a long ways towards helping him feel more confident. And the more confident he is, then he can brush things off as opposed to like barking at every little thing. And I remember the exercise I showed you on with people standing up. Anything that he does and barks like that, we want to recreate that situation. So have a guest come over. This is a form of classical conditioning. So basically the guest is over there sitting and make sure you practice a whole bunch of different chairs, sitting at the bar and all over the place. So I would have her maybe outside or somewhere else. And then basically the person stands up, and Thor looks at him, and then we give a treat, and then and so basically for Thor right now, standing up, because for humans, standing up is a very commanding, that's the most authoritative position you can be as a human. So if somebody stands up, he's like, oh, what are you about to do? I think I'm in charge of security around here. So we want him to think people standing up is a good thing. So classical conditioning means something happens, and it's a mean indicator of something is positive that's going to happen next. So somebody stands up, and then he gets a treat. Then they sit down, and they stand up and gets a treat. And remember to lower the intensity level as low as you can. He can't bark or react, and if he's doing that, then you would either increase the distance, slow down the speed, or turn down the volume depending on what you're doing. So in this case, I might have him move further away from the person, or have the person stand up in a slower gait. It's a little inappropriate, Macy, but you guys are okay with it. So that's normally something I wouldn't like her. That's her way of challenging him for his stick. Now they're comfortable. He came in as a puppy. They know each other. Some dogs can get away with it. And if you have two dogs that you don't know, I would not allow this sort of thing. You're fine here. Okay, so so remember, and if it's not only just standing up, it could be sneezing. It could be a person clapping their hands. It could be a loud laugh. So all the same, the person ha 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 treat, ha 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 treat, ha 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 treat. So the idea is, again, and you again practice in different locations. Dogs don't generalize well. They have to practice everything they do. Thank you for the looks. Okay, so we also talked about, and it's a kind of an icy snowstorm, so this is a very abridged version. But basically, we talked about exercise. Now, because they both have mobility issues, him much more than her, we have to find some creative ways of exercising. So for her, she's okay using the stairs. I would still want you to talk to your vet and make sure your vet's okay, because this is a repetitive activity, and my job is, I'm a head doctor, not a body doctor. So a lot of times when I do a doggy stairmaster, not appropriate for him, but for her, maybe take a treat, throw it to the bottom of the stairs, she runs to the bottom of the stairs and licks it up, we say a command word. Now remember, for dogs, they hear the first word that you say. Don't say good sit, just sit. In this case, we're coming up with a command word that needs to go to the bottom of the stairs. So I would probably say, I like to say Jamaica, Mexico, Cuba, Venezuela. It's a little bit long, but I like funny command words. Dogs are the only animal on the planet that can read a human facial expression, especially because he's insecure. I'd like you to put an emphasis on coming up with funny, humorous command words that are going to make people laugh. We talked about there's 3 dogs beds here. I would call this one this is maybe Jamaica, this is Bermuda, and that's Cuba. So if we want to use an island theme. And just put a little post-it note. So if the dog comes over and sits here, you just say Cuba, or whatever that particular dog bed represents. So that just is a nice way to create a positive association. So basically, because of the mobility issues, she walks, and she has a lot more stamina on a walk than he does. So the guardian right now walks her and him together, then drops him off and continues walking her. I would just exercise her first. Give her, and after the exercise, she needs at least 10 minutes to recover. And then after that 10 minutes, then we can take her out for a walk. And walking together is a great thing to do. But we want to balance it out so they can complete the walk. Now remember, on walks, sniffing burns more energy than walking. So sniff as long as it's safe to do so as much as possible. Some of the other forms of exercise I went over involve sniffing because it's very draining for dogs. I would get a couple snuffle mats. And basically it looks like a floor mat with a lot of tassels. You put their food in there, work it into the tassels. The dog has to use his nose to find the food, move the tassel over, lick it up, and then use the nose to feed the next piece of kibble. And so this slows down the feeding process. It is calming and relaxing. It's also stimulating for them, and it burns energy. And for dogs with mobility issues, this is a wonderful thing for them to do. Right now, the Guardian feeds twice a day. She has the ability to teach not teach, but to be home. So I would move them to portion that out to 3 portions. So that way you can get more exercise then. They go for a walk each day, but if we can supplement that by 3 meals, also scent games. So just Google scent games. That's a great way. She was waiting for him to chew it. He's done, so now she went to her own. Okay, so scent games, just Google it. You could just hide treats around the corner, around stuff. You can have a lure, and it's maybe in this cabinet. The dog's got to use its nose to find it. Helps it work for its food, boosts the confidence, and it's an energy-draining exercise. The last one I would recommend is that Omega Paw treat ball. It's the orange ball. It was about the size of a softball. It's a treat dispensing toy, but it has a sleeve around the hole, so it doesn't all just pour out. You have to roll it, and I get 2 pieces of kibble that comes out. And then I got to roll it again to get it. So he'll nudge it around. I say soccer when my dog licks it up because they look like a little soccer player. Now be careful when the food is done. Sometimes there'll be 1 or 2 pieces. I shake it and get that piece out, but then I take it up. A lot of dogs, the big dogs like this, will destroy it and see, why you're not paying me any more food. Now you have to buy another one. So the snuffle mat you can wash. I would get those on Amazon or Chewy. They're about 18 to 20 bucks. Don't get a small one. You want a fairly good size one because these are big dogs. Those are nice ways to burn some energy without being high impact that would be very beneficial for them. Remember, your average dog needs an hour's worth of exercise every day. These guys, he probably needs more than an hour's worth of exercise. So if we can get 3 meals, some scent games, and we go for a walk, that might make a big difference. Before you're doing the activities that's in the video above, exercising them, don't overdo it, but exercise before that. Just like if you're working with kids, we give them a recess and they come back and listen about civics. Well, we don't teach civics anymore, but you know what I'm saying. All right, so yes. Now remember, any attention is validated. He barks a lot. When I came in, he was very nervous. He was anxious. He was barking for me to leave. He thinks he's in charge of guard dog duties. I asked the guardian not to say anything. She can say, and you can give him a sit command. And if he does sit and follow command, that's okay because it is stopping him from practicing that barking behavior. But what I would rather do is create a situation where he doesn't react. So I'm guessing if I were to simulate a knock right now, he would start barking like crazy, right? So use that to your advantage. When there's nobody at the door and you're not going to get up, knock, 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 knock on the wall, knock on the table. They get up and they race to the door. But guess what happens? Nothing. Nobody comes in. They don't see anybody. You don't go to the door. We desensitize them by basically de-emphasizing this and helping them recognize that it's an old house. Sometimes there's a knock at the door. It doesn't mean anything. So now you can also use the counter condition or the classical conditioning that I showed you. So knock, and then he gets a treat. Knock, and then he gets maybe 2 knocks, he gets a treat. And at first it might be, then. And eventually you're going to raise that criteria until it can be like, pound, like you're the police at the door, and he's like, whatever. Now some people like the dog barking at the door, so that be a personal preference depending on what you guys want to do. Okay, so exercise is really important. We also talked about rules. Hey, kitty. So for dogs, leaders, well, in the dog world, burning energy is like a form of currency. And so if you're not willing to burn the energy to get up and enforce a rule, you really don't mean it in the dog world. And so dogs don't see us acting like leaders if we don't have a lot of rules. And a lack of rules to dogs means that we are peers, and for peers, the listening to is now optional. So I usually like to recommend my guardians have some rules so the dog can see you acting like a leader. So the first rule I usually, and remember, it takes 66 days to form a behavior pattern or habit. The other guardian here works in the medical field. So the reason for that is the myelin sheath development doesn't happen until about 66 days. And that's how over the neural pathways. Dogs have the same principle. And so that's why after about 66 days, they get in that habit of doing things. So be very militant about this stuff for about a month, month and a half, and the dog's going to get in a habit of doing it. All right. So now that's a little bit of a temper tantrum and we'll talk about petting with a purpose, which will help with that. The book says that the dog demand barks, no free pets, and not being allowed on the furniture. So food for thought. Okay, so it takes 66 days for these rules to be in place for that long. I usually tell people for 3 months or as long as the problem's going on. Now remember, breaking a rule to reward a dog is very confusing and frustrating and causes them to want to do it. So if you want to reward them, give them a belly rub, a bully stick, take them for a walk, play. Don't invite them to break a rule. A couple of things before I get to the rules. Anything your dog is doing when you pet is what you're reinforcing. So if your dog is barking and you say, stop it, well, also good attention, bad attention, same thing. So if the dog barks and you say, stop it, barking is a great way to get my human's attention. Well, let's say that Thor is nervous and he's barking and he's like, it's okay, good boy, it's okay. And the guardian's shaking your head because a lot of people do this and they create a command word, it's okay, good boy means bark. Because the only time I hear that is when I'm barking or I'm fearful and the dog will become more fearful. Excitement is one of the first ones, most probably notorious that people do for this, but it works for anything, aggression, fear, stress, anxiety. So instead, when the dog is calm like she is right now, this would be a good time to pet her from the nape of her neck to the base of her tail in very slow strokes. In dogs your size, about 4 seconds each. And then we're going to assign a command word of what this energy is. Dogs learn through association, repetition, and good timing. You have 3 seconds to make the connection. So if she's relaxed and you pet her and say, settle, when she's relaxed, now you're putting in context what this command word means. Most of the time the dog is barking, we say quiet, and I hear quiet only when I'm barking, so clearly quiet means bark, which is the opposite of what we're trying to accomplish. So, all right, so anything your dog is doing when you pet is what you're reinforcing, but anything that your dog does in your presence that you don't disagree with is a seal of approval. So in a very real way, not saying no is the same thing as saying yes. So now if the dog's barking at me or grumbling like that for attention and I correct it or give it any attention, then that's validating. So what I would do instead is I would just ignore it. But if the dog's barking at the door and I don't like that, I would go correct and disagree with that right away with the hissing sound. I'll do that next time she does this. You can't see off camera, but Thor just stopped and looked and she stopped doing it. So now, but again, be careful. Some, just like kids, some dogs will misbehave to get that negative attention because again, for dogs, good attention, bad attention, same thing. So I would more interpret that as I need some exercise or yawn. But so if you do some set games or feed her a snack out of the snuffle mat or a treat dispensing ball, that can be a nice way. Or take her for a walk if you have the ability to do so. Okay, so let me see. All right, so getting back to the rules. First rule I suggest is not allow the dogs on the furniture because the higher a sit dog sits, the more rank or social status they have. Sitting here says we are peers, but we're not peers. I probably shouldn't want that relationship. I want a leader-follower dynamic. I want the dogs to identify to us the way that children do to a parent, hopefully. I'm a member of the group. I have a voice. I have a vote. I can complain. I can make suggestions, but I don't have the final vote, so I don't have the burden of responsibility on my shoulders. He thinks he's a guard dog. We have to essentially demote him. The more he sees you enforcing rules, the better he feels about that. So now we might have, I might come back to work on the door exercise, teaching the dogs not to do the door, but you can do that counter conditioning or the classical conditioning exercise I showed you. I call this, I call it an essay makeout session. I have a female male that does this. So you maybe call it like, suck face or something that means to kiss. Because that's essentially kind of what they're doing. But it's kind of a funny thing. And yes, and I don't mind. This is really just a video. But again, that's passive training when they're doing this. If you like this, or if you don't, then this might be something we would say, hey, let's get them some exercise. Okay, so the first is the furniture. And I usually recommend having the X mats because those X mats are a great way to help the dog stay off the furniture because it polices it instead of you. So the X mats are about $11, $12 a piece. You can get them on Amazon or Chewy. And that way you put those up there and then you're like, I'd let you up, buddy, but it's here. And if you want to sit down, your partner does, you come and fold it, tuck it under the couch, you sit here, you go to the bathroom, you unfold it and put it there so they get out of the habit of getting up there. Because they have mobility issues, it's probably better for both dogs not to be up there anyways. And it's confusing for them. Okay, so that's the first rule. And remember, after the 90 days or whatever, inviting them on the couch for being a good dog is very confusing and makes them want to do it again. So belly rub, pet under the chin, or whatever the case may be. Okay, so other rules, you have to sit at the door before I let you out. Go to the door, command the dog to sit one time. If the dog does not sit within 3 seconds of the first time that you say it, sit down at the kitchen table, pull out your phone, check some emails, read a magazine, article, or whatever it is, but ask your personal assistant for a 1-minute timer. After 1 minute, go back to the door and repeat it. Command. I say, sit. If they don't sit this time with it, and let's say that she sits and he doesn't, I would open the door and let her out and not let him out. I'm paying based on performance, just like you would grade kids in school. So if they don't sit, then I close the door this time for 2 minutes, and I sit down for 2 minutes. Make sure you're seated. Standing looks like you're waiting on them. Next time I walk away and sit down for 4 minutes, 8 minutes, 16 minutes. I keep double length of time. I don't want to go out, they do. So if you want to go outside, you got to earn it. You got to do the smallest thing you can do as the dog world and sit. And if you can't be bothered to sit, I can't be able to open that door. But boy, if I tell you to sit and you sit, man, you'd be amazed at how fast that door opens. This will train them to sit at the door. We have baby gates in the house, so I'd recommend that you use the same principle for them to go to the garage or wherever it is. Any door, sit. Now, if you're doing this out and about, you're going to Starbucks. I live in Santa Monica and here. So if it's Santa Monica, you take your dog anywhere. Well, you go to Starbucks and say sit, and the dog can sit. Well, now you have to sit there waiting for them. So the nice thing about this doing it in the home is it's convenient for you because it's where you're most relaxed and comfortable. Okay, first do it with whatever direction is more important, then do it in both directions. And they'll just start sitting at the door as their way of asking to go out. Now for her, the guardians, I think, might have done a little confusion about potty. So if we think she has to go outside, the guardians say, do you want to go outside? You want to go make a potty? That's a lot of words. I would say just the command word. So every time she's outside, if you happen to see her, open the door and yell potty or whatever word is. And when she gets done, give her that treat and say potty a second time. I really give dogs command words twice. I'll show you here. Sit, sit. To tell the dog what I call the command stage, and don't practice shake anymore. It's confusing them. So I tell the dog what to do. Crash. That's passive training. We'll talk about that in a sec. I tell the dog what to do, and then if it does it the first time I say it, then I pay it and tell it why I'm paying it. I do this even if the dog's an adult and it's well trained. It's just a good habit to get into. Okay, so other rules: shouldn't be allowed in the kitchen when you're preparing food. I would say not allowed onto the hardwood floor if you're eating at the work island or at the dinner table. And that way the dogs have practice of not doing something. They have to practice self-restraint and control. So you look for opportunities to help them practice. Have that door open with the baby gate there, but you can't go through the threshold until I actually call you through. And so we want to create these scenarios and situations where they have to practice a little bit of self-restraint and self-control. Also respect for you as authority figures. I want to go in that room, but the door's open, and my guardians have taught me not to go in there without permission. So even though the door's open, I'm not going in there because I've been trained not to do that. So, all right, let me see. There are other probably examples of rules that you can use. Different situations. You have to sit before I put the leash on you. Be off the floor before I put the food down and whatever it is. Also, make sure that you're eating food first. And I would feed them. The snuffle mat, you could probably feed them together. A lot of times I feed them one at a time, but the snuffle mat really slows down the feeding process. It's gonna be 15 minutes. It's gonna be half an hour feeding, which is not reasonable. So I just probably put them in different areas and don't let them feed off each other's mat. When they get done, pick up the mat, and you probably have to get like a Tupperware tub. I'll probably get it all, but you turn it over and shake it, and any other food comes out, and you can wash them. They will get a little funky, so you probably will need to. But just make sure you're eating something first. 5 bites of a piece of celery, chip, cracker, that works. So those are some examples rules, but look for other ones that you can incorporate as well. The next thing we talked about was petting with a purpose and passive training. Petting with a purpose is the dog comes up and tells you what to do. Well, leaders tell, followers ask. So if she comes up and paws or nudges or grumbles for attention. Well, if she does that and I pet her, well, then that's teaching her this is the way to ask a human is go put their paw on them. Well, then now I'm going to put my paw on them. And so that both dogs might get confused about that. So what I would do instead is when she gives me an order, I give her a counter order, tell her to sit. If she's already sitting here, I ask her to sit over here or to lay down. If she complies within 3 seconds, I pet her under her chin and say the word sit and only the word sit, pet her as much or as little as I want. If she doesn't comply in that 3 seconds, playing hard to get works great for dogs, as well as for dating, as well as for dogs. I stepped on my punchline. But so show her, if you don't do what I want, I got 23 other things to do, and you missed out. After a while, your petting and attention will become more valuable to the dog. Now, petting under the chin promotes a good body mechanic. The nose in the air, that's a confident dog body mechanic. Insecure dogs have their head down. I would avoid, especially for him, ever petting him on top of the head. Pet him anywhere else you want, but if all things are equal, pet him under the chin to facilitate that nose up. After a while, the dogs will realize, I can't tell the humans what to do anymore. I have to ask. And better than ask for their attention, I have to pay for the privilege of their attention. And I pay for it through a currency of obedience. The dogs start coming and sitting in front of you to prepay for the attention. And you bet your bottom dollar, you better start petting them once they do that. Otherwise, they're going to go back to nudging or pawing at you. So pet them at this point as much or as little as you want. If they do it multiple times, it's probably an indication they need some exercise. or give them a bully stick or something preoccupied. And again, go to the green spot, use that card, get a kneecaps. My dogs, they're their favorites is the kneecaps by far. But giving the appropriate chew toys and having some in reserve are great. If you have guests come over, you can give the dogs, when they're stressed, they like to chew. And I gave him a couple and that helped him settle down a little bit. Okay, so I was, remember to use the watchword paycheck. If you see your partner is petting the dog and the dog's standing, they say paycheck. Even if that person, even if you did it right, you would stop petting, tell the dog to sit. When it sits, pet on the chin, say sit. And actually, I asked the dog to sit. When you opened the door, the dog stood up and I continued petting, but thank you, because I do forget to pet without a purpose. We don't realize how often we do that. And even if you want to pet the dog, you should still tell the dog to sit. This will achieve three things. First of all, it increases the dog's respect for you as an authority figure, because it's instead of telling, it's asking. Number two, it boosts the dog's self-esteem. I'm not getting this pet and attention just because I'm good looking. I earned this pet, and that boosts the confidence. Number three, it helps them practice sitting, and make sure sitting is fine for the dog with your doctor or your vet. But the idea is, if we were going to learn how to do something in hard version, we practice the easier version until we have that and then that helps with the harder version. It's the same principle here. If you get in a habit of petting with a purpose, every time you pet your dogs, it becomes a micro dog training session that accomplishes those three things without even being aware of the fact that you're doing it. It truly becomes a gift. Now, what I mentioned earlier, I did passive training. So she laid down and I petted her within 3 seconds of her doing it and rewarded and celebrated something that I liked, laying down. That's a desirable behavior for me. So every time your dog comes to you, you should pet it and say, come. When you didn't ask it. Every time it lays down, sit, or crash. I call this flop on the side. Whatever your command words are, again, come up with funny command words. So name all your individual toys you already have, the Guardians have. And so that way you can say, give me the DNA. No, that's a ladder. I want the DNA or the geometry or whatever it is. And again, the dog goes over here. And this is to scratch. This is to make sure there's no snakes and spiders and to fluff up the pillow. That's what she's doing there. And the dog didn't do that. And this also could be an indication I need a little exercise as well. So if the dog didn't do that and went and laid down, is it a black side up or red side up?
Red side's fine.
All right. And the dog laid down on it, and you would say Cuba or whatever the name is. Again, that's passive training as well. I use passive training for feeding my dogs. Every time my dog takes a bite of food, I have 4 dogs. I say grub, chow, feast, and lasagna. So each dog has its own unique word to eat. So you could have them, again, if you're doing that delayed gratification, put down those snuffle mats. And then when they take their first bite of food, then you say lasagna or sushi or whatever it is. And so now you can actually have them waiting for permission and who's being better, and then you give them permission to eat. They're, again, waiting for your reinforcement. Now, so what we're doing, like I said, is we're celebrating. So that's the watchword I usually recommend, is celebrate. So if I'm standing here and, Macy, the lower your hand is more. So let's say she just walked up, I didn't see it, and somebody says celebrate to me. I would look at the dog and say, come, because she's standing. I assume that she doesn't have a stand command, but she probably does have a come command. So celebrate means I just saw the dog do something that we should be petting and you missed it. So just turn and start petting the dog. Now this is grumbling. Now she's doing it for a reason that I would maybe dissuade you from doing this, but if you did want to teach her to do that on command, I've taught my dog to grumble. Every time I did that, I would pet him and say grumble. And now he comes up and goes, when he wants attention. He prepays for that. You might not want to do that, but again, if they do unusual behavior, every time the dog goes like this, call it like nose. Or if it's scratched by the ears, hard to get, or whatever it is. I think she actually wants to go out now, but we're about to finish this up. So now a couple things for him. If he doesn't like a guest, exercising him before the guest comes over is really going to help. When the guest comes over, I would get one of these. This is a mini treat pouch from PetSafe. It's got the little clip. You can put it on shorts or stretchy pants or whatever, and I can fill it up full of treats and put the high value train treats. And when the guest comes in, give it to the guest. Now the guest can do a couple things. Now if he's barking from a distance, you want to try to avoid throwing treats to the dog when it's barking, because that could be reinforcing it. Let's say he's relaxed. I don't want him to come closer. I would throw the treat halfway distance. He's thinking about it. And if he moved away, then I would throw another one a little bit closer. Kind of like what I talked in the video. I don't know if we put it in the video above or not. But basically, and another thing you can have the guests do. So the tossing the treats is a good one. The hand targeting is great, but if you can't do that, then teach the dog to catch. And that's what, make sure you pick it up if the dog doesn't catch it. Catch. Very good. So each time the dog catches it, you say catch or reception or whatever the word is you want to use. And so now when guests come over, they can interact with the dog at a distance. The first stage is just get the dog practicing. And like the video above, we want the dog to rep it. So we want the dog to approach the person and walk away. And if they're only coming like 2 feet towards the person, that's fine. Eventually it'll be 3 feet towards them, 4 feet, and eventually it'll come all the way up to them. And remember, for the guests, and then if they don't, and then once they're doing at that point, if they for guests or anybody, if they reach to pet Thor, they should reach. If this is Thor's snout, they should reach here and stop. Leave a couple inches. If Thor backs up or turns his head or lowers, he's saying, "I don't want you to pet me." And the more that person pulls their hand back and stops trying to engage with him, the more confident he gets. They should not try to talk, "Oh, what a good-looking dog. Who's a good boy, Thor," and all that. It's going to cause the dog to be like, "What? You're being weird," or "What are you trying to get out of me?" And it makes them suspicious. You want to just completely ignore the dog. And so the dog just is comfortable and relaxed in your presence. So treat toss, if you need to get the dog to approach, practice approaching. When you get closer, if you can't do the hand targeting, do a little bit of the treat toss, the catch. And then eventually we would like you to the point where, and it might take 2 or 3 visits before that person can interact with them. And then you can have that person practice standing up. But I would make sure the dog's not barking when the person comes over to the same extent before you start working on that, because that's more challenging. Trying to think what else. If you see them jumpy or twitchy, definitely don't pet them for that. That means cortisol is in their blood. That's the stress hormone. You'll amplify it. If you see the tail ever going to be phallic between the legs, definitely don't pet them, because you're going to reinforce that fear. That's Macy. I thought it was Thor for a second. I think it was Macy. Yes. Okay. Let me see. We all review the escalating consequences to disagree with unwanted actions and behaviors. If your kids are confused, they want to know what those are, message me. I can share a video with that. I don't like to share those videos publicly because some people get confused. I'm not big on correcting and I don't reprimand dogs, but I do believe a series of escalating consequences. But sometimes people take those out of context, so I like to use those only when I'm talking to people. And you guys have taken our puppy classes and you've already had a session, so you can explain all the ins and outs. All right. Let's see if we can get handsome buddy to come here. Now, when I'm holding it for guests, it's going to be easier for him to approach from the side. Remember, front facing is confrontational. The lower you go, the more it's for the dog. If the dog won't come here, then I'll just go do that. He sees it there. He's looking at it. He's thinking about it. And look at his side. You can see how he's breathing heavy. That can be an indicator of stress. So that's okay. I just want to sum it up. That was Thor. Macy is grumbling in the background. We don't have to show her. I'm David. And this is the roadmap to success. Oh, there we go. But see how he's licking me a little bit, but he's still a little bit further back. So I didn't reach and pet him. We think of petting as a good thing, but if the dog doesn't want to be petted and you do it, we might reinforce the wrong thing or damage the relationship. The dog's like, "Oh, he's trying to touch me at all times." But if he can come and lay here and I resist the urge to immediately start petting him, he's going to feel more and more relaxed. And after enough repetition, then you can reach and he doesn't turn, then you can start petting him. All right, well, that was Thor. Macy's behind us, and I'm David, and this is their roadmap to success. Remember, everything you do trains your dog, only sometimes you mean it.